words to share as we read responsively this morning. It's a prayer. God of all creation, what do you require of us? To do justice, seeking peace and reconciliation, standing with the marginalized and forgotten, to love kindness, showing compassion and unconditional caring for those who need, to walk humbly, following the steps of Jesus, lifting up not the work of our hands, but the power that sustains our service. Three very worthy prayers. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fred Wooden. I'm one of the clergy who serve here at Fountain Street Church, a liberal church that has been part of Grand Rapids for almost 150 years. I am so glad always to see the faces I know, and even more delighted to see faces I don't know. And I'm delighted especially that, is this cantando, is that correctly? An assortment of high voices, all of them happening to be women. And they're not always women that are high voices, after all. I have a tenor, it's okay. And not all low voices are men either, by the way. But they will be singing with us today, and we overlap and love at least once or twice with church members here. But some of you who aren't, and a special welcome for making our worship even more delightful. I look to my left to welcome Dub Chapkus. I asked him how to do the Dutch name thing. I'm not good at that. And he's going, Chapkus. And for all of you who I don't know, a special welcome. Much goes on here, even in the summertime. And the first thing you need to know is that following this service, there's always a time of fellowship, which can be found out in our lobby and into our social hall. There is coffee. Do stick around. I'm sure Doug would be delighted to have a few words with anyone who is mobilized, motivated, and otherwise moved by his words today. You can learn about us as well. We have me and others from our congregation who will be delighted to tell you more about Fountain Street Church. Lots of other things go on around here, and if you're really interested in becoming part of us on an ongoing basis, even as a friend, please let us know. You can let me know, or we can let our new executive director, Jack Waller, know. He's out there as well. I wish I could say more, and I could, but I'm not going to. We're going to hear wonderful music instead. Welcome.
Quickly, while Cantando is getting in place, thank you for having us. We just love coming here. We go to a lot of churches, and this is a very special one for me and for us. And partly because you have a Grand Rapids treasure here, and her name is Marilyn. We just love coming here because any music we pick, she's willing to learn. And that's not always the case. So thank you, Marilyn. And she's very flexible because we've got her playing claves now and new things. So thank you.
The Holocaust is a stunning reminder of the tragic results of prejudice and hate toward other people. But it is also a reminder that hope held firm will eventually reign victorious over the greatest of odds. The following words were inscribed on the walls of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews were hiding from the Nazis during World War II. Hope was all they had to hold on to. Hope was their only bridge to a brighter tomorrow.
I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining, and I believe in love, even when there's no one there, and I believe in God, even when she is silent. I believe through any trial, there is always a way. But sometimes in this suffering and hopeless despair, my heart cries for shelter, to know someone's there. But a voice rises within me, saying, "Hold on, my child. I'll give you strength, I'll give you hope. Just stay a little while." I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining, and I believe in God, even when there's no one there. But I believe in God, even when He is silent. I believe through any trial, there is always a way. May there someday be sunshine. May there someday be happiness. May there someday be love. May there someday be peace.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I have to, because this next piece, if you read the fine print, was the tune and the words were written by Mary Queen of Scots as she was imprisoned by her cousin, correct, Queen Elizabeth? It was her cousin who had her put to death. So really moving text, amazing woman.
Behold thee,
Good morning, and thank you for having me here this morning. First, special thanks to you wonderful musicians for the contribution you've made to the service. All of you. It has been so meaningful, and the words are so meaningful, and they fit so well with where we're going this morning. It's an honor for me to be here this morning. I'm not really asked to do that much public speaking. And I suppose the argument could be made that it's not that I'm not a very good public speaker. But the real point is that the topic is not very popular. We really don't want to hear and think about prisons and prisoners very much. And that's really unfortunate. I was asked a couple months ago already to give a sermon topic, a title. And I'm often asked in the work that I do, well, how did this white Dutch boy, born and raised in a Christian Reformed church, ever get involved in working with prisons and prisoners? And so I thought, well, I'll just name the sermon "The Road to Prison." Well, as we got closer and I started really working on this message, I thought, two things. I'm not sure who really cares how I got here and why. But besides that, I know just how little I care to be up here talking about myself. So, well, the title was already in print. We had that publicized already, so I'm sticking with the title, but I'm going to develop it in a whole different way because I thought it really would be worth our while for a few minutes to examine who really does travel on that road to prisons. At first glance, we really know. We know the hardened criminals do. The murderers, the rapists, the child molesters, the sex traffickers, and we really kind of hope it's a one-way street. But the story is much more complicated than that, and that's what I'd like to just talk about for a few minutes this morning. And I'm going to give some examples. I can't cover it all, but in the past 15 years in working with these people, I think I can cover some that are very important to you and to me. And to begin with, I'd like to talk about the mentally ill. The mentally ill travel that road to prison. And some of you are old enough to remember when we did all that closing of mental institutions here in the state of Michigan. It was back in 1974, and we closed 40 of them. We were going to mainstream these people. We mainstreamed them all right. We mainstreamed them out under bridges, and then we mainstreamed them into the county jails, and then we mainstreamed them right straight into our prison system. And we got a bunch of them in the prison system. The state of Michigan conservatively estimates that about 20 to 25% of their prisoners are mentally ill and being treated for that. But if you talk to the prisoners, it's much, much higher than that. Some say at least 50%. And the sad part of this is, now we've got mentally ill in a facility where they're not being cared for properly. These people aren't trained to do that. The guards and the corrections officers, I mean, they're trying to do the right thing, I think, in some cases, in many cases. But it isn't happening that way. I was just thinking about this when I put this together. We dealt with a lady named Carol. And Carol was in the acute mental care unit. And she was denied food and water for 3 days because she wasn't behaving. Well, I don't know that that is quite the way to treat this, but she finally lost consciousness, and even then, some uncaring nurses were still administering the psychotropic drugs. And when she finally was taken to the hospital unconscious, the prisoners thought she was dead, and they told me she was dead. We found out later she wasn't quite dead. She was hospitalized, and she did revive a little bit. We just got in there too late. We were tripping over ourselves trying to help, but she never fully recovered. She died. I call that murder. Wrongly convicted travel the road to prison. That's what got me into this business. In 1995, I happened to meet a black man who claimed he was wrongly convicted, a man by the name of Maurice Carter. Some of you may remember the headlines in the Grand Rapids Press. It was a big story here for a while. I worked 9 years with a group of people, but I kind of led the fight because he didn't have much family or many friends. Maurice served 29 years for a crime he did not commit. I just got a call. As I was putting this together, I got a call just 4 days ago. Dear black lady in Lansing, Michigan. We've helped her a couple of times. We've given her a ride to prison to visit her son. She's handicapped. She called 4 days ago to tell me DNA testing just proved that her son didn't commit the crime. He was sentenced in 1983. Think of that, over 30 years. Kenny Winemku's a name you may not remember, but Kenny Winemko was the second person in the history of Michigan, in Michigan history, to be proved innocent by DNA testing. He served on our board for a while. He estimated that as, I think he's high, but he estimated that as high as 15% of the prisoners that he met were wrongly convicted. It's important that you know that in Michigan, I looked this up just before we came, there were 63 exonerations in Michigan since 1989. 63 people who were finally proven innocent. And guess what? 500 years of their lives were lost. 500 years. And you know what? They walk out and the state doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry. We'll help you now. You don't even get an apology, nor do you get compensation. The state doesn't give them anything. Shameful. Repeat offenders travel that road, and really Michigan does pretty well with this. About a third of our prisoners go back, and it's much higher in many states. Michigan, on and off again, has really tried to do some things on reentry, and I'm hopeful they're going to try and do it some more again. But it does happen. A third of them go back. And it's because many can't get jobs, many can't find housing, many find rejection among family and friends. But this is the thing that really annoys me. About half of those that go back are in violation simply of parole or probation. They haven't really committed another crime. They screwed up on abiding by some rule. But the state in its infant wisdom decides, well, now you better go back to prison. Jim just did not report to his parole officer on time and was written up and was sent back to prison. We don't really have to do that, do we? There are many women who travel the road to prison. While the majority of prisoners are men, a report by the Center for American Progress noted this, that it is women, disproportionately women of color, who are the fastest growing segment of the incarcerated population, increasing at nearly double the rate of men since 1985. African American women make up almost 1/3 of the female prison population and are incarcerated at 3 times the rate of white women. There are about 2,300 women in prison here in the state of Michigan. They're all in one facility. Actually, it's more like one campus in Ypsilanti. It's called Women's Huron Valley. They're really 2 big prison facilities there. Thanks to a grant from this church, my organization is working hard to try and help these women, to improve the lot for these women. I have such a heart for them. We are not treating them well at all, and there's just a lot of problems there. We are especially focusing on battered women. We came up with some interesting statistics on this. Nationwide, women who kill men receive much more severe sentences than men who kill women. Statistically proven. And the other thing is that 95% of the women who kill men are victims of abuse. 95%. And I share the story very briefly with you of Nancy, a very dear friend of mine who our organization has been trying to help for years. A professional person, not a criminal by any stretch of the imagination. No priors, no history of being a druggie or anything else. She was a professional person, but a victim of abuse. And her husband, literally, I hate the word literally, everybody's using it all the time now, but this one is true. Literally, he was trying to kill her in the garage of their house. And she reached around and grabbed anything she could find and got a small hatchet and killed him. The prosecutor convinced the jury that it was premeditated murder, and she's in prison for life. Now, that's shameful. And she is not the lone wolf. We are now working with another agency, again, thanks to this grant, to help try to put more of this together into documentary form, perhaps even into a book and perhaps into a video. We're working with another 501c3 to make that happen. But you must know that many of these battered women are labeled criminals now, and many will never get out. And that is a sad commentary on our system. Juveniles take that road to prison. Boy, I hate that. Michigan's finally making some progress in this, but kids are going. I can tell you so many stories about kids that shouldn't be in prison, but two of them come to mind. Two little boys, both committed alleged crimes at the age of 13, both mentally ill. Two separate situations, but it so happens they're from the same county, and the reason I know that is because I think that judge did such a disservice. He decided that both of these kids should be placed in the adult prison system. And it was a terrible thing. I visited with them both. I had an opportunity to call on both of them. It was a number of years ago. Drank root beer with them, ate candy bars. And I know from the stories of other prisoners just how poorly they were treated. I know one was raped. I know that one was seen sitting on his bunk just crying because the guards were teasing him so much. Isn't there a better way to handle all of this? One of the kids had a big, ugly sore in his arm, black spot in the middle. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I was sticking my arm through the slot where they hand the feeding trays. I was putting my arm through there, and the guard jabbed my arm with his ballpoint pen." I said, "Why did he do that?" He said, "Because he's a jerk." A man by the name of David Delmonici, director of the Center of Educational Excellence in Alternative Settings, has this to say about our young people in prison. "These are not bad kids. They are poor. They have failed at and been failed by our school systems. They are disproportionately kids of color. Many are victims of violence and abuse, and they mostly live in under-resourced neighborhoods racked by violence and high unemployment." Nonviolent offenders travel on that road to prison, especially the federal prison. We don't work with the federal prisons, but boy, the federal prisons are loaded with people that we snatched up in that war on drugs that we lost. With these mandatory minimums and 3 strikes you're out and all that monkey business. But there are a lot of people in our prison system who are nonviolent offenders: theft, embezzlement, substance abuse. You know, we want to be tough on crime, and we hand down those big sentences, but there's just got to be a better way. And while I'm thinking of a better way, when you get home, get on your computer and Google, see what some other countries are doing, especially Norway and Germany and the Netherlands. You'll find that these countries don't have capital punishment. These countries don't have life without parole. They believe that life without parole is essentially saying you cannot be rehabilitated. You are beyond change. No, they have a belief that even the most vile criminal has potential, and they do something about it. They work hard at it. And you know what? The recidivism rate is the lowest in the world, and they're closing prisons. It's working. A psychologist for the Norway prison system said, if we treat them like animals when they're in there, they're going to behave like animals when they get out. And ladies and gentlemen, 90% of the people in our prison system are going to get out. It's time we start paying attention. American historian Howard Zinn said this: "I am convinced that imprisonment is a way of pretending to solve the problem of crime. It does nothing for the victims of crime, but perpetuates the idea of retribution, thus maintaining the endless cycle of violence in our culture. It's a cruel and useless substitute for the elimination of these conditions: poverty, unemployment, homelessness, desperation, racism, greed, which, he said, are at the root of most punished crime. Then he said this: the crimes of the rich and the powerful go mostly unpunished. And he concludes, it must surely be a tribute to the resilience of the human spirit that even a small number of those men and women in the hell of the prison system survive it and hold on to their humanity. So in summary, yes, there are hardened criminals on that road. We believe it's there for a purpose. We know we got to do something with these people. But the road is too busy. It's cluttered with too many people who are dealing with too many problems, just like the problems you and I deal with. And people who shouldn't be on that street at all. Besides that, many are not being treated well. And regardless who travels on that road, all of these people are created in the image of God and deserve humane treatment. Sometime I should do a sequel on this. Talk about the road going home again. How hard it is to get on that road and how few travel it. Well, where am I going with all this? People don't ask me right up front, but I know they're thinking it. Why care? What do you care? Why care about prisoners? Well, I can tell you, as a follower of Jesus, I don't believe I have any alternative. I think that's where I belong. I call the work that I'm doing Jesus' work. But regardless of your own position, it's a moral and humane issue. The Constitution says that, incarceration is the punishment. We can't add to that. It's cruel and unusual if we do try to make this worse, because just because they're in there, we're going to make it hell for them. And from a practical and taxpayer position, your pastor and I were talking about this before church, the cost alone. You and I are paying $4 million a day to keep prisons open in the state of Michigan. $4 million a day. I was just reading in the Free Press, I think it was last week. Listen to this. From 1973 to 2013, Michigan increased spending on schools by 18%. Sounds reasonable. During that same period, we increased spending on corrections by 219%. Shameful. Shameful. The incarceration rate is so high in the state of Michigan, you know that 1 in 30 people in our state is either in prison or has been in prison, jail, or on probation or on parole. How many people do we have here? 1 in 30. Think of it. And this, I think, is especially detestable. 1 kid in 10 in Michigan has a parent in prison. 1 child in 10. Tell me that's not our concern. Going to conclude with a little story about the Special Olympics. You're familiar with the Special Olympics, right? Challenged kids. This is a neat story. One of my favorite stories happened some years ago in one of the western states. A bunch of little kids were getting ready to run a race. I think it was a 100-yard dash, if I remember correctly. And the starter pistol went off, and they all left, except one little boy who tripped and fell just as he was getting started on the race. And he got up again, and he tripped and fell again. And this time he just remained down on the track, crying. And as the children were running, a little Down syndrome girl turned around, noticed her little boyfriend wasn't there. She turned around and saw that he was down on the ground, so she ran back. And she's back there helping him, cradling him, wiping his tears, getting him back on his feet again. And the rest of the kids say, hey, now there's a couple of them missing, and they turned around. They came back. Well, the beautiful part of this story is when they got the little boy up and around and feeling okay again and had his tears wiped, they all held hands, and they all crossed the finish line together. Now it's our turn. It's time now for you to hold the hand of this 80-year-old man as we call for justice. It's time for you to hold the hand of my 15-year-old organization, which continues to swim and struggle in a sea of unpopularity and offering action with compassion. But more than that, it's time for you and me to hold the hand of Eduardo, who foolishly committed a crime while he was a little boy and has been in prison 40 years under the cruel sentence of life without parole. To hold the hand of Michelle, a mentally ill inmate who has been hogtied, tased, and gassed simply because she doesn't understand the rules. To hold the hand of 82-year-old Elmer, who after 38 years was still denied parole because he might be a threat to society. To hold the hand of Judy, who is dying, alone, behind bars, away from family and friends, and afraid. It's time to join hands with all 42,000 people behind bars in our state as we cross the Matthew 25 finish line. May God give us the courage and the strength to do just that. Amen.
May the